All right, everyone. So I'm going to talk about taking the search data that we already have and pivoting it to help you better understand your customer. And okay. So, one of the things I think is just a great part about our jobs is we get to help people find answers to things when they're stuck or when they're trying to figure something out. And I always want to ground us as search people in a world where, yes, there's all these cool things you can do on Facebook and Snapchat and all these things. They're great. But what you and I both know is that when somebody types something into Google or Bing or wherever it is, right, they're looking for an answer to that question. And when we do our jobs really well, we get an opportunity to help answer people's questions. And I think that's a great job. And, we all are out there and we all make content, quote unquote, right? But very few of us, and I want you to think about it. Think about the amount of content pieces you've produced, the amount of people that visit your site. Have you ever actually listened to a person go through your website or go through a Google search result and talk out, hey, the reason why I clicked on this site was because I read this word? Like those kinds of insights, I think you can only grab when you are actually listening to somebody go through a Google search result and tell you why they're clicking on what they're clicking on. And that's why after 20 years of doing search myself, I'm still really pumped about search because I think it's a pretty cool thing to show up with the answer when people have a question. Now that all sounds good, but at the end of the day, we got numbers to hit in our businesses, right? So therefore, it's like, hey, Will, yes, answering people's questions is great, but that is not a KPI on my dashboard. How am I going to convince the executives and my boss to give me an opportunity to do this kind of work? Well, I look at this study done from, I believe it was McKinsey, the global consulting firm. And they looked at highly successful CMOs versus CMOs who are not as successful. And when they asked them, what was the number one factor that drives your success? They all said it was being the voice of the customer at the leadership table. Being the voice of the customer. So therefore, if that is what successful marketing managers believe their number one factor is of their job, and that's attributed to their success, then we have to attach our work to the things that those folks are saying is their number one reason for existing. And why I love search is really the voice of the customer at scale. That is what I love about search. And whether we're looking at AI, whether we're looking at machine learning, whatever all these kind of new technologies are, they're rooted in clean data. And when CMOs are surveyed and they're saying, well, where are you using things like AI and whatnot? They're using it mostly, I saw the highest rated one was content personalization, right? So how can we go about personalizing our content and making it better? And that's one of the other areas where using data and technology is really, really important to marketers. And I'm going to show you how search can support those things. Because honestly, how can you really personalize an experience if you don't even know it exists? And that's why I want to break down what makes a great customer experience and how we can use search data combined oftentimes with other data to create great customer experiences that drive profitable outcomes. So let's start with this example of a wedding dress. If I type in wedding dress for woman over 50, right? I don't typically search for that, but you can imagine most of the people searching for wedding dress for woman over 50 are probably women over 50 looking for wedding dresses. This is the beauty of search. So now let's look at the word for over 50, or that part of that phrase that's telling us something about wedding dress. Now here are all of the results that Google is showing. First of all, notice how Google's not showing in this screen capture at least, and this has changed a bit since then, but they weren't showing any faces. Therefore, you got to click on a lot more ads if you can't see the faces of people to determine which ones are over 50 and not over 50. Adding the words over 50 to the search is telling you something about that experience that that customer is seeking. If I'm looking for somebody who's over 50, I don't know how old this woman is, but she definitely does not look over 50. This was another one of the ads. Now, these are the ads that marketers are paying to show people. This lovely woman, probably not over 50. And this is where using AI can help you better create ads that reflect the needs of the customer. So Google's Visual API, or Google's Vision API, you can drop an image in, and I dropped in an image of a watch in this instance, a Rolex. And notice that it gives you a confidence interval on what the image is. So now when you think about what kind of visuals you should show people, Google's Vision API can kind of tell you what types of images are showing up, and you can run them through. Let me go back there. Sorry, I'm going to explain that more clearly. You can take, when Google shows images in search results, pull those images out, run them through the Visual API, and start to see how well are the search queries matching what Google thinks about the image. So not only can they tell you what the image is, they can tell you a bunch of other labels for what they think it is, along with a confidence interval. They can even tell you logos and how confident they are in the logo that is shown inside of an image. So why couldn't we? Now, you can't do this with Google's Cloud Vision API, but if you search for Age API, you will find other tools that enable you to say, hey, if people are searching for my words with things like over 50 or over a certain age, there's an age API out there that you can run your images through to see how often are you showing images to people that don't really match their intent. So for the age example, you can use, if you Google Age API, you'll see tools that can take pictures of people and tell you their age. But if you broadly want to look at this for e-commerce results, product shopping, if you're trying to improve your social ads, like what kind of image should I show in my social ads? I don't know, maybe look for keywords that trigger image packs on Google, take all those images out, throw them into the Google Cloud Vision API and see what they all have in common. Maybe that's a more data-driven way to determine what you're going to put in your images. For social ads, great customer experiences are also accurate. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not giving your customer the right answer, that's a bad customer experience. And I can't tell you that I think this is more important on your branded search than anything as a place to start. So Wells Fargo is a bank, believe mostly here in the United States. I don't believe they have it, a Wells Fargo. I don't think they have Wells Fargo locations over in Turkey, but it's a local big multi-billion-dollar bank. And when you ask Google, are they open on weekends or not? Google's giving you an answer, but that answer isn't the brand. And this is another way that we can talk to brand managers and CMOs. How often are we as search people told, oh, just go rank this thing? And when we try to engage with brand managers and CMOs, they don't care about canonical tags. They care about revenue and all those things, and they might care about some rankings. But this is a way to say, hey, we're spending a lot of money on our brand. We care about our brand. But yet when people search for words that include our brand, how often do we not own the answer? And you can quite easily, I'm a big fan of Power BI. So if you look on SEER Interactive's YouTube channel, you can find all my different Power BI instructional videos. But I took a bunch of the keywords, dropped them into Power BI. I could see that there were 296 different questions that included Wells, which is part of the brand name for Wells Fargo search terms, but they only owned a third of all of the answers that included their brand. These are the kinds of things that can help motivate a marketer, a CMO, a brand manager to start to try to write that more of that brand copy and better answer customers' actual questions. So it's quite easy to do this. You pull your rankings for all of your keywords, and you also bring in all the people also asks. Then when you bring in and ingest the people also ask questions, you just take out what domain is ranking for them. How many of those domains aren't your domain? And then right there, you can start to see how often am I not answering the questions of my customer? My favorite thing to do is to join that data with my paid data so I can see how much are you paying on these branded keywords and how often are you spending money on words where you're also organically have that answer showing up, but you're not driving the customer to your site. And you're letting somebody else own a conversation about your brand. Dangerous. Okay, great customer experiences, in my opinion, are consistent. What do I mean by that? Here I'm typing in a keyword, best savings account for wedding. Great. I got a bank that shows up with an ad. That same bank is also showing up organically in position 3 for the keyword. Okay, so they have an ad at the top and they also rank in the 3rd position. That's a good thing. But take a look at the page they're driving people to in the paid ad. It has nothing to do with the wedding. There's no mentions of the word wedding. But yet there's 15 mentions of the word wedding on the page that's just a couple pixels down if someone scrolls down just a few pixels. So think about the differences in those two experiences. Here's another example, Citizens Bank. Here's the page that ranks number 5 for the word joint bank account at the time. And then here's the paid landing page for that same keyword. Do you see how different those two experiences are? So now when your customer searches for a keyword, if they go to organic the first time, they get that page. And if the page in organic, like this one, really solves their question, answers their question and whatnot, they go back to Google that, and the next time they click on your paid ad, and this is the experience that they get, we need those experiences to be consistent. So what I like to do here is to take my high converting paid search terms, non-branded. Then I take my PPC costs for all those search terms, and I run rankings for all those search terms. And then once I join those two data sets together, I can say, where do I rank in the top 10, right? For keywords where my paid search terms, let me just go back here, right? So where am I spending money and bringing in the URL and the keywords I'm driving people to in paid, where I also rank in the top 10 organically, where I had to earn that ranking. And now you can look at your paid landing page and compare it to your organic landing page and see if they're really different from each other. Because what that means is you're going to be serving up very different experiences to your customers. And those experiences are going to be highly inconsistent if you have a landing page that looks like this for the keyword in paid and a landing page that looks like this in organic. And you want to make sure that those two things work together for your customer. Great customer experiences, they also have to be relevant. This is the beauty of search. Search's goal is to provide you relevant answers. However, sometimes those answers are old and out of date. So I Googled, how many keywords should I put on a page, let's just say, okay? And at the time, Moz, a trusted blog, had the 2nd position or the 3rd position. So I went, great. Let me go ahead and click on that. It's Moz. It's a site that I trust. But notice the answer's from 2008. And here's the answer. The number can be as low as 1 and as high as 15. So I can target 1 to 15 keywords per page. And this is coming from Rand Fishkin, a super trusted resource. But the fact that it's old means it could be out of date, because this is an example of a page that ranks for 1,158 different keywords in the top 20. So this idea of, hey, here's how many keywords you can roughly rank a page for, I would much rather take my paid data, run all the rankings for those keywords and say, okay, how many pages are able to rank for these keywords in the top 10, top 20, top 5? And you'll find that this idea of a best practice around number of keywords is woefully out of date. Now, how can you use this to your advantage? Well, the date that I showed you here, let me go back, that date is available for you to scrape. And when you scrape those results, you can bring them into, again, I use Power BI, and I say, show me all the content that is between 1.5 and 10 years old. And then what I get left with are domains after domains after domains that my client is competing on, where somebody's got really old content that I might be able to beat them out. And as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm also able to show my client, hey, here's how much money we spent on these keywords. And we're allowing a site that is 7 years old to beat us out for this keyword. I think we might be able to rank for this keyword and not have to spend all that money every year. Now, maybe you continue to do it in paid, maybe you don't. But what I like to do is to find old pieces of content, show them to my client and say, hey, this is the content that's beating us that is 7, 8 years old, 5 years old, whatever it may be, and say, do you think we could write something better than that, knock them out, and then let our content rank for years and years and years to come? Please, my friends, do not evaluate your impact on a business for content by ranking well for 1 year. Because very often what I find, especially with this data, is a lot of pieces of content are able to rank for years and years and years. And all I do is I just go after content after content after content piece, finding old pieces of content, showing my client what it looks like, and asking them, can we build a piece of content that is better? Okay, so what do? I take my PPC search terms and my cost, and I take that export from paid, and then I say, show me rankings for all those keywords. Then I also export the publish date for all the sites that are ranking. And now I can look for, where does my client have high converting, high spend keywords where the content that is outranking us is very old. And I go back to them and say, hey, you're spending this much money on these kinds of keywords. Look at how old this content is. But it's not just that it's old, it's that it's usually content that's of a certain age, sometimes is no longer relevant to the customer. So if we can write content that's more up to date with the things that have changed over the last 2 or 3 years, then hopefully our content will be more sticky. And then that will send Google signals that says, hey, this piece of content should be ranked higher because it's obviously more relevant and it's answering people's questions. All right, great customer experiences are also understood. And what do I mean by that? Well, we can't really talk about marketing without talking to some extent about the pandemic. Let me just make sure I'm looking at time here. Okay, I'm getting close. So we have to talk about the pandemic and how that's impacted customer behavior. If you're looking for wedding venues, you can kind of see in the 5-year trend, every year it was about the same, right? You look at that top line, and then all of a sudden you see in October 2019, we fall out of the range. And then later in 2020, you can see that that top line there did not go up as high as it did in the last 4 years. So people looking for places to have a wedding changed, right? We get that. That makes sense, of course. If you're looking to build a deck on your house, okay, well, that popped a bunch during the pandemic as well. But imagine trying to do this in Google Trends across millions and millions of keywords. It just wouldn't make sense. So what I believe is, she who finds the trend and can act on that trend fastest wins. Search is about execution. I'm building the mechanisms that enable my team and my clients, and I'm sharing it with all of you, to be able to quickly find opportunity. The question is can you act on it fast enough to take advantage of our speed? So one of the things that we did after COVID is we looked at every piece of every single search term. And we said, okay, when people add in a word, what does that do to conversions and impressions? And we could see, for some reason, after COVID, this client had a search term when the word easy was part of a larger search term, we spiked 20,000% increase in impressions. So what that was telling me is more and more and more people are using the word easy after the pandemic had started than they were before. That gives me an opportunity to change my language or to at least better understand the customer, that this word is a driver for them. Let me show you another instance of how you can look at how individual pieces of words affect how you go to market and optimize. So I'm using the word auto here because I'm looking at some auto insurance keywords. And at least in the United States, I see Geico, I see Allstate, I see State Farm, I see Esurance, and Nationwide. The top 5 results here, and I'm sorting by conversions, that are ranking for the most keywords that have driven the most conversions for me are all car insurance companies, okay? And there's many other ones throughout that list. But when I add the word cheap to auto, you see how all of a sudden the search result has more publisher sites in it. Value Penguin, NerdWallet, The Zebra, US News. They are sites that are publishers. They're not car insurers. So they're going to be affiliates of companies like Geico and Nationwide and Liberty Mutual. So now I can say to my client, Hey, auto keywords, great, right? We know we can compete on those. But when people add in words like cheap with auto, ooh, let's take a look at that. Can we really win here? Now, in this instance, we can. We can see that Geico and Nationwide and Liberty Mutual are all producing content that ranks for cheap and auto. But we also have to be aware that there's a lot of other competition in there that could be also part of our affiliate strategy as well. And I just want to remind you that once you start to try to break out these search terms, you start to understand the impact of one single word on a search phrase has a massive impact. And monitoring those different word pieces at scale can help you to better understand and be the voice of the customer. Let me give you a real example. The ad on the left was an ad that we had written for a client related to getting your master's degree in library sciences, because that's what the degree is named. So that's what you name it. But what we found was that through doing an analysis of individual search words, is we found people using this word become. And we said, wow, that word's showing up a lot only for this librarian degree. And we said, well, let's go ahead and try the word become a librarian as our ad headline versus the old headline of MS Library Information Science. We ended up increasing the click-through rate by 105% and increased conversions by 96%, all by better speaking the language of the customer. And really, if you think about it, we check keywords all day, people. If you keep putting these keywords through systems to just get rankings, you're missing out on other opportunities like the ones that I just found. We already have paid data. We already have ranked data. It's the combination of the two that can create runaway success for you. And how did we do it? We just took pieces of words on the left-hand side. How do you do this? How do I become this? And across the top, we looked at all of our clients and we said, oh, there's an outlier down here for how do I become? So by looking at these different pieces of words, we were able to find outliers by client. And then now that lets us go back and create better ad copy. And I showed you the old ad versus the new ad. And oh, sorry, I updated this slide. I have more information for you. So I was trying to update these slides before. 174% increase in click-through rate. And we also decreased the cost of those by 35%. So this is quite simple. In order to do this, all you have to do is take all your search terms and engram them. And engramming just allows you to look for pieces of words inside of those search terms. And then you sort by different words that you care about, become or safety or versus or best. And you can see across, for me, I can see across all my clients and go, where are the outliers? And with those outliers, maybe I can better change my ad copy. Let me give you another example of how you can understand a customer at scale. So we all know that Google shows those people also asks. Well, after the pandemic, one of the things that we said is, hey, people are concerned about safety. That was one of our hypotheses. So we brought in let me show you, we brought in 937,000 unique questions from Google across our client base that are showing up for 1.6 million unique keywords in this analysis that I'm showing you here. We sorted where the question included the word safe. And then we were able to look at each client and how many conversions are triggered by the keywords where safety is showing up as a question. So we can talk to clients about whether or not it's going to be impactful to their business. Not just, hey, this word shows up a lot, but is this word or this question showing up a lot for keywords that also drive meaningful business for you? And I can't show you all the questions because there's some client names in there and whatnot, but now I'm finding each one of the questions. And I can say, okay, you know, this question is being triggered by 6,500 different search terms. And when that question shows up for those 6,500 search terms, our cost per acquisition for that group of search terms is $264. And then I can compare that to the client's typical CPA. Now what I'm able to say is, hey, when that question around safety shows up, is our CPA better or worse for those kinds of keywords? What can I learn from this analysis? To better understand your customers using what Google's already learned about them, you can take all your PPC search terms, you pull all the people also asks for those search terms. You join it to your cost and conversion data, and you can do the same analysis that I just did there as well. And the last one here is that great customer experiences are aligned. Let me just check my timing here. Okay, I got about 10 minutes, so I think that's what I have. So CRM for financial advisors. And you can see different ads. Financial planner CRM, good. Financial advisor CRM, good, right? So they're speaking the customer's language. They're actually not. Oh, this is so frustrating, right? So if I type in CRM for financial advisors and you use dynamic keyword insertion to say, hey, we're going to add in financial planners or whatever it is, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But if you're changing the ad copy, shouldn't you also change the landing page to reflect that experience? There's nothing mentioned here at all about the plight of a financial advisor. They have different needs. That's why the user typed in CRM for financial advisors, because they wanted somebody to speak in their language. And this page doesn't do it. And remember, that was a paid search landing page. Whereas Wealthbox, who was another person that was showing up, they're using the words best CRM for financial advisors. It was reimagined for financial advisors to manage clients. They're better speaking the language of that customer. Okay. So I'm going to show you one last example of how words change meaning. So I've been showing this example for probably 4 years, 5 years now, but it's still the best example that I've come up with to articulate how one word matters. If I add the word joint in front of a certain type of bank account, and I do that search, and I look for site after site after site, all the people paying at the time were showing things that weren't about a couple. And if you're looking for joint bank account, you're looking for an account for 2 people that they can share together. This one has 1 person. This one doesn't talk about joint bank accounts at all. But yet somebody started using the words correctly. Yours, mine, and ours. Save for your wedding, joint account. But look at everybody else. Look at how simple uses yours, mine, ours, wedding, us, and everyone else just says nothing about bank accounts related to weddings or joint bank accounts. And then when you look at the page for simple, they're showing 2 people because this is a bank account. The word joint in front of checking or savings account means it's for 2 people. See how they use the word together and shared. In order to share something, there's got to be at least 2 people, right? You can't share with yourself. Save faster together. They even show 2 cards off to the right and 2 people off to the right. So Simple was building better landing pages because they understood the voice of their customer and they turned that and executed on that. And given where we are with time, I just want to make sure that we've got enough time for questions. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this last one because I think I've talked about that a good bit. I'm just going to remind you that this isn't all about just paid data or SEO data, but you can also put up questions like these on your website. And it takes a lot of traffic to get statistically significant data, but screw that. It's another opportunity for you to hear at least from 1 or 2 of your customers to answer how they felt about your content. What's the one thing we should change on this page? That's a great question to ask people. You've already done all this hard work to get people to the site. Why not put Hotjar up on your website, which I think has a free version of Hotjar, where you can ask questions like these. How well is this page working for you? And then you can use that data to make future improvements to better align your content with what customers are looking for. I'm going to wrap up here by asking all of you to take a good look in the mirror. A good look in the mirror. Take a look at yourself and ask yourself, how data-driven and customer-driven is my content strategy? Am I basing it off of things that I just want to write about? Am I trying to pull data to better understand customers and what their needs might be and how they use language to better write in their language? Because successful CMOs and marketing leaders, they are ready for you to make the pivot. And I'll leave you with what I started with. The most successful CMOs, according to the study by McKinsey, say that their #1 job is to be the voice of the customer at the leadership table. And I think if we can take this search data we already have and find ways to pivot that data to align to the voice of the customer, we're going to be able to sit with those successful CMOs and help them to drive their strategies forward more than ever. All right. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate all of you. If you have any questions, I can take them if we still got time. And if not, have a lovely, lovely evening. And thanks for having me once again. I hope to see you really, really soon in Turkey.
It's really amazing. I mean, I really wanted to be there and clap for this presentation. So it was very nice. Thank you so much, Wil, being with us again.
Hello, Wil. How are you?
What's up? How are you?
It is nice to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Thanks to your energy, I wake up at 5 a.m. to make last touch to my slide deck. So I get the energy. Your energy just feels like a Red Bull on my body. Thank you for making this happen. I have lots of questions and asked Mehmet about whether I can join to ask my questions personally. If it is okay to you, I want to share a few of them with you.
Let's do it. Okay,
this is great. So I think that you were mentioning the Wells Fargo slides. How do you define the own branded queries? For example, the example you have showed seems like the first result of people also asked, but what is the definition of owning the branded queries? Listing on the first position to answer the question, or just top 10 results?
So let me, can I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can share it again.
All right, cool. I'll share my screen and I'll show you exactly the way that I see it. All right, so if I type in a query, is Wells Fargo open on weekends? I'm scraping out who is the domain that owns the answer. And then once I get the answer, I can say, if that answer is wellsfargo.com, then we own it. If that answer is not wellsfargo.com, then we don't own it. And I think that it's really important. If I were to say, how long is a flight to Istanbul from New York? Let's see. Like Google's Google. Oh, I hate Google. I hate Google. Look at them just giving themselves their own space for their own ads.
Yeah.
But the answer is it's a 10-hour, 55-minute duration. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because people have gotten used to this answer being correct. So if you search for this, people are used to saying, oh, well, whatever's here is probably the answer. But if you don't own it, that could be a problem. So that's what I'm saying there.
That's right. I understand that. Most of them are the questions, and maybe 90% of them has feature snippets. So you are just focusing on the ownership of feature snippet. Got it. Thank you. And the second one is that I think that you are one of the best data storytellers in Earth because you are selling content marketing like never one can do. I want to learn more about how do you approach to sell content, the value of content marketing. What you describe in here, especially for old contents, if we calculate the lifetime ads value of those contents, it will be extremely high. So it will be also impactful for any decision maker's mind too. And you can even encourage any regular CMO for spending $100 for regular content and returning for years, and the ads value of this traffic is something like this, and these ones are the real numbers. And in this case, I have seen that you made lots of custom analysis by using the Power BI. So how do you approach executives to sell the value of content especially? Do you use the lifetime value like approach in here, or do you use any other strategy?
So my strategy lately has been, I just show clients the facts. I don't try to say, oh, and here's how much I think you can make on this over years. I go, my job is to show you the facts, which always sounds like this. Hey, client, I found this piece of content that is ranking for 675 keywords that you have spent money on in paid. In the last year, you spent $10,000 on those keywords. And this piece of content has been ranking for the last 5 years. So what I can tell you is that this year you spent 10,000. Let's just assume that next year you're going to have to spend 10,000. For the next 5 years, it's going to cost you $50,000 to show up for this. And I'm showing you somebody that's ranking in Google that has a piece of content that's 8 years old. You know, maybe if we rank for 3 years or 4 years for one good piece of content, and at that point, like, I'm not telling the client, oh, like, this is what I think. I'm saying these are the facts. You did spend this much money for this many keywords, fact. And this one URL is ranking for hundreds of keywords. And yes, it is that old. All those are facts. And then I say, wouldn't you want to maybe produce that content? Like, you're going to spend 50 grand over 5 years, or we could spend $1,000 to write this content and rank for 5 years as well. Which would you choose? Like, you can do both. But why would you not spend $1,000 to write this content if you're willing to spend $50,000 to show up for those same exact search terms and paid?
The secret is, I think, asking the correct questions and also supporting those questions by the spend at budget might also add any power.
Because so often we use tools like SEMrush, and they'll have a cost per click in there that is their version of like what they think it is. I have the actual client's cost per click. I can say, this is how much you actually spent for those clicks. That's a fact. So now there is no like, well, I don't believe the SEMrush data. It's like, right, I don't use that, right? I'm using your data on what you actually spent is way different than like, because once you start to use SEMrush or Ahrefs or Google, people can start being like, I don't believe that number, or I don't think that number's right, or that number seems really high. And then you're on the defensive being like, well, that's the only tool we have. If you got paid data, I can get that exact answer on what exactly it cost you. And it's a better answer, in my opinion.
It is great. It is the most obvious data to show, of course. And
you have conversions. You have conversions at the search term level. That's the other thing. You know, we talk about, oh, you should rank for this content because it's got a lot of searches. And then the client said, well, how many of those people do you think are going to convert? And we're like, I don't know, maybe 10%. And it's like, well, how about you actually take the search terms that have actually driven conversions for the client and paid? Like, literally, that data is already there. So like for me as an old guy who goes around, you know, talking about my experience, if I was a younger person right now, I would be all about getting the data, because old guys sit around talking about how long they've been doing it. Oh, I've been doing it for 20 years. That doesn't matter. If I got the data that I can look at millions of keywords at scale, it's like this one Power BI document has more information in it than your 20 years of experience.
That's right. That's right. And also getting the conversions and the real transactional value for each search term is very valuable. You know, you are an experienced SEO. We can only get this kind of data maybe 15 years ago before the not provided stuff. So it is very valuable. You're right. So the last question in my mind, why do you keep the value inside of the Power BI? Don't you have any software solution plans in your mind? Because those things are very unique, and after then spending few years in software as a service parts of Zeo, we are trying to build a rank tracker. So those ideas are extremely inspirational for software makers. Do you have any plans in SEER for making some innovation in software industry too?
We do, but it's hard. You know, I think so many of us, you know, SEO is full of a lot of people who build little tools and then think that people are going to want them, and then nobody buys them. I'm no different, right? Like, we launched this tool that we had built to kind of bring some of this stuff out of Power BI into a software, and it's been hard to sell it. Like, you know, it's hard to sell tools. And I think that it sounds easy when you're hanging out with a bunch of SEOs and we're all talking about tools we built, but ultimately we all have to go to our bosses to get budget to pay for these tools. So even though it sounds cool, it may not get funded. So I'm even struggling right now with one of the tools that we built on how do we sell it so that we can bring it out to market. And the one that we built is a tool that basically helps you to find waste in your paid search accounts, like instantly. right? It's really fun. It's really fun. It works across languages. It's really good. But I can't sell it yet. So I have to get better at selling it so then I can try to bring it out to market and continue to invest in it.
Yeah, and when you compare with the value when you sell one-to-one by adding the personal touches and making this a custom report specifically focused on people's data, it is much more valuable when you compare with some report output of any software solution.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're also starting to use Looker, which is a great platform to be able to. What I like about Looker is I can embed Looker into a tool that we build. Like you build all the HTML and all that stuff around it, whatever it is, right? And you build the visual layer, but Looker can power all the data inside of it, which lets people do things like log in and check their data and whatnot. So Looker for us has the opportunity to let us bring more of our data to market in a way that doesn't require us to completely be building out separate tools each time. So we're also using the Looker platform to start to build some things to make it easier for us.
Last question on my mind. You make lots of custom HTML stuff, and parsing Google is not very easy thing to do. Do you use third-party APIs or just in-house operation helps you to scrape the specific fields like the date before description?
We use a third party because scraping Google is tough. And it changes so much that I want my team to be telling the story with the data, not having to go back and be like, oh man, Google adjusted their HTML, so now we got to fix that. I'm like, I want to stay on the telling the story side. Like, how do we join Google scrape data to other data? That's the space that I want SEER to own and get really good at. So we outsource all of our third-party scraping to somebody who just focuses on that, because I don't want to have to build the infrastructure. I mean, dude, sometimes we're throwing 10 million keywords at Google in a month. Like, you throw 10, and then we're storing 10 million keywords sometimes like every couple months to look at trends over time. Oh my God, the amount of developers that I would need to manage that wouldn't be worth the investment. And then they got to be able to take a vacation once in a while, right? It's like, I want my people to be able to take time off. And if you're scraping Google and it breaks and it's running all my analyses, I can't have that.
I feel the pain. I have spent my last 2 years of dealing with all the crawling operations, so I can feel the pain, and it is very acceptable to see that you are looking for a managed solution. It was my estimation, but I just want to confirm that. Yep. Thank you for an amazing presentation. I really appreciate it. I think that there is just one more questions from another user. That maybe you want to mention.
Question here. Do you use any crowdsourcing powered user experience platform? Oh yeah. So I think we use usertesting.com for our user testing, and really it's less about the tool. For everybody that's still on, I can't see how many folks are here, but for anybody that's still here, as an SEO, try to get out of the mentality of placing too much value on the tools. So often we're like, oh, what's a tool? What's a tool? What's a tool? What's a tool? A tool is rarely a competitive advantage for very long. So once you learn it and somebody else learns it and someone else learns it, then you're all getting the exact same data back. So at the end of the day, I'm always looking for, like, the tools are great, but really to make customer interviews work, it's having a person who knows how to ask questions in a way that aren't biased and knows how to get information from people on why they're searching the way they're searching. It's the person behind the tool that's much more important than the tool itself. But I think that we use usertesting.com as as one of the tools that we use.
Yeah, it's just like Warren Buffett's moats. Everybody can just enter to this business and get the same insight by using any specific tool, but getting the logic behind of it will help you to survive from any changes.
Or at least for a while, until people catch up. So like, think about what I just showed all of you on how I joined PPC and SEO data to understand published dates. And if I were to say, okay, now go find a tool that does that, you're like, oh, I can't find it. And it's like, right, where you create value is the big thing. Where there isn't a tool that exists, you create a strong brand, you create high margin, you create things. But once it's like, oh, I got this tool, the client's looking at you saying, well, if I can get SEMrush and I can get this tool and that tool, and that's all you're doing, well, why am I paying you for that when I can do it all myself? You know, so I'm always about like, how do I find an opportunity to innovate somewhere that I can run with for 3 or 4 or 5 years to then come up with the next thing and the next thing. And I think there's one more question here that I will read out. It's, I have many valuable reviews for my company spread in more than one place, some on Facebook, some on other websites. How can I focus on one place? And is the last one the best to link to it with emails or posts to lead the customer to one place? Ooh, so that's not a question for me. That's a better question for Greg Gifford. What I will tell you though, is you see how I'm engramming, I was talking about engramming different search keywords to understand little pieces of words. Something that I've been doing for one of our clients. They're a global company, and they had a lot of webinars during the pandemic. And people were asking a lot of questions in those webinars. They were sending in their questions in advance. So this is just like reviews. You can take reviews and engram the reviews and start to look for trends in different words over time. So imagine if you not only scraped your reviews, but you also scraped competitor reviews. And then you started to look for certain words over time to be like, what are people saying about them? And is that good or bad over time? Because if people are starting to do bad review, bad review, bad review, maybe I should start changing my bid strategy on their brand name in paid, because I'm taking and scraping their reviews and looking at people saying bad things about them over time. Whereas if their brand is getting stronger, then maybe your bids against their brand won't work as well because people are happy, right? So like, these are the kinds of things that I get really jazzed to talk about, because it's like, that doesn't exist anywhere, right? When you bring that paid bid strategy together with what people are saying in reviews and how that changes over time. And I'm actually working on something like that right now.
Yeah, it is a great idea. I think that if you are selling a physical product, maybe Amazon is, I remember that open source their all review database. So maybe running specific engrams on those physical reviews and then seeing the trends in time series data might be helpful. Can you send me that? Yeah, of course. I can send you through Twitter after the session.
Please do. I would love to look at that.
That will be great.
Excellent. All right. I think that's all the questions we have today, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I swear, as soon as it's safe and we can all get back together again, I would love to go. Oh, last question here. How does Hotjar work? Okay. So Hotjar is just a JavaScript tag. You put it into your website, and then it allows you to see user mouse paths like over the site. But to me, that's kind of old. Like, everybody's seen those tools before. And to be honest, like, they're helpful, but they're usually not that helpful. The thing that I really love about Hotjar is it lets you push up questions to people. And I like pushing up questions to people on highly visible pages that get a lot of organic traffic. So I can ask them, how well does this page solve your problem? Because Google, when people get to your website, your piece of content, and they bounce, and that's not answering their question well, Google sees that over time, and then your rankings start to drop because Google can see the user signals. So if you think about it, if you were asking people, how well is this content solving your problem, you would be getting data on whether or not that answer is good or bad at the same time that Google's getting signals, which would help you to get ahead of losing your rankings, because Google needs to see over time, there's patterns in people's behaviors that go, we don't think this is a good answer. So, but you don't find out as an SEO until you lose the ranking. So one day you're ranked 5, 5, 5, 5. And then one day you come in and you're down to 20 or 30 or 40. And you're like, oh my God, like we lost the ranking. And it's oftentimes because Google's saying, you're not a good answer. So if you're asking people for questions on like, is this content solving your problem? You can find out earlier, like, oh snap, a lot of people are saying no, no, no. So let me try to fix this before the algorithm catches that it's not good and knocks me all the way out. So that's what I love about using Hotjar or tools like that.
Thank you so much for your detailed answers.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. So thanks a lot for the amazing presentation, for your great energy, and hope to see you again in Istanbul next time.
I hope to see you as well. Take care, everybody.
See you.
Okay. Thank you,
See
Will.
ya.
Bye-bye.
My pleasure.